Everybody, Andy here again, day 10. First things first, I'll put the figures down below. Not good, sort of, what was it, 569 deaths once again yesterday, or reported yesterday, and the total deaths now 2,921. But as I said, that's the amount of people that have died in hospitals, I believe. And obviously, with all of this, there's a lot of big argument going on at the moment about testing here, and the amount of testing, the lack of testing that we're doing, especially considering other countries. I know Germany, obviously in Europe as well, are testing far more people. If you're testing more people, you're generally going to get more reliable figures as to how many people have had a coronavirus, COVID-19, whatever you want to call it. As I've mentioned before, I know several people locally who haven't been tested, but they know that they've had it because they were told basically by a doctor that the symptoms that they had, or the symptoms that they felt they had, were pretty much exactly what they were expecting. And one of the things that's come out is about the lack of taste and smell. That's one of those sort of things that I don't think it's actually been necessarily proven yet, but it's one of those things that's come out which they didn't realise to start with. Let's move this a little bit. But is definitely a recognised sort of symptom now. So people are having it. Some people are having it, and obviously they're not even realising they've got it because they're getting very, very mild symptoms. There seems to be quite a lot of variation in the types of symptoms and the severity of the disease, even regardless of what age you are. Even we've had, thankfully, reports of people in their 90s over here in the UK who are surviving this virus, which is brilliant. But one of the things I want to talk about, because this diary, I'm hoping, and I started this 10 days ago, obviously. With the idea of, well, I didn't know what I was going to do with it at first. It was a case of getting back into doing some vlogs, and then you think, well, actually, I could try and do this on a daily basis. I didn't know whether I would, but I'm trying to keep that up because it's, as I said before, it's what I call part of the digital memory bank. It's this sort of store, this archive, if you want, of your own personal feelings about something. And as other people have pointed out, that's sort of class of 2006, the old vloggers back in the day. When we started doing this type of thing, obviously back in 2006, as I said, and it's great to see some of the old school coming back again. More and more of them were coming out. And I watched a video by Tom from Connecticut. Yes, I think it's Connecticut or Pennsylvania, one of the two. Sorry, Tom. Great to see him again after a number of years. But he made the point that this is exactly the sort of situation, crisis, if you want, that something like YouTube and something like vlogging is made for. I mentioned the other day about diaries and people keeping diaries throughout history, the famous ones of Anne Frank and Samuel Pepys and people like that as well. But now, in some ways, it's more important than ever. We have the internet, so we can put things like this up. We can write blogs and obviously post them online. We can do vlogs and put them online. But people are still writing old-fashioned, old-school journals, which is brilliant, And having been very lucky to go to Florence last year and seeing the notebooks of people like Galileo and Leonardo da Vinci, their actual handwriting in their actual notes, and even Anne Frank in Anne Frank's house as well, seeing them, that's a real privilege to be able to see that type of thing that survived, for hundreds of years, and hopefully will survive for hundreds of years more, that people can still look on. But our local council, Hastings Borough Council, decided to get onto this. Very good, I think. Great idea that they posted up the other day and I was pointed to. They're going to have the museum here in Hastings, the Hastings Museum. They decided to try and get a load of people together to write journals of this particular time, the coronavirus diaries, the sort of thing, exactly what I'm doing here. And they're encouraging local people to keep a daily journal. And what they want to do ultimately is create a collection within the museum itself, an archive which they could then use for displays, for sort of shows and everything like that in times to come, collect all this at the end. So I contacted them and said, look, yes, that's a great idea. I'd love to be involved with this, but, I'm not writing, I'm doing it the new way. Have you considered the new way that the people are doing it, like doing videos, and you're seeing them all over the place now. TV channels are using them, newspaper websites are using them, vlogs, because it's so easy, and we're all teleconferencing and all that sort of stuff, so the video content is very easy to come by. And they said, yes, got the reply back, yes, we'd love you to be involved, but we're still working out how we're going to get you involved by, how we're going to include video within the collection and displays that we might actually do, exhibitions, if you want to call it that, in the future. So, hopefully that's going to come. one. But that'd be good. But it's good to see them do it. But it reminded me once again, I'm going back again, to something that happened before. Back in the 1937, an organisation started here in the UK called Mass Observation. And it was started by a guy called Tom Harrison and some other colleagues as well. And well, actually, I'll read it. Because I've got a book here. I'll show you this book. This book is, we're talking about that the other day. This book is called Living Through the Blitz, and it was written using the diaries of all the people that they managed to get together at the time. And I'll read what he wrote, actually, this, in his preface to the book. It says, mass observation began in 1937 as a several-pronged reaction to the disturbed condition of Western Europe under the growing threat of fascism. In particular, mass observation sought to supply accurate observations of everyday life and real, not just published, public moods and anthropology, and a mass documentation for a vast sector of normal life which did not at that time seem to be adequately considered by the media, by the arts, the social scientists, and even by political leaders. And I think that's a very good point, actually. You're putting these things out there and you're getting the real people. You're getting my thoughts, the ordinary person's thoughts, those health workers. We've probably seen videos and that go viral, sorry for the pun, online of nurses not being able to get food when they finish their long shifts, things like that. And they can inform political, the direction. And actually the mass observation did have some, because obviously it came into its own, started in 1937, but really came to its own in the Second World War. And they had a network of about 500 people from all over the country writing daily journals of their experiences, which are often slightly different to what the published one. And actually in the little flyleaf just inside, there's a very good example of this, actually. It says, on 11 a.m. on the 3rd of September 1939, Neville Chamberlain, the British Prime Minister, announced that Britain was at war. Shortly afterwards, he left Downing Street, cheered by the crowds, according to the BBC. As two representatives of mass observation just happened to be on the spot. Neither noticed any cheering, although one did remark that most people seemed to be running away in reaction to the air raid siren that had just gone off. So that shows you, as they said, exactly what they wanted, the official line, and what actually really happened. And there's that whole debate going on at the moment. People keep talking about the Blitz spirit here in the UK, about the time of the Blitz when people supposedly all came together, helped each other out. Yes, they did to a large extent, but there's a lot of undercurrent of other things that went on, and the manipulation of the truth, shall we say, especially by interested parties, politics and politicians and people like that. That still happens now. We see it happening all the time. But all the time we can do things like this. We can write things down. We can publish videos. We can publish vlogs and blogs and everything like that. There is always that record of what really happened to the ordinary person, and sometimes the ordinary person is the most interesting out of the lot. So we'll see what comes out of it. So have a go, do it. Write something down and say you don't have to publish it yourself. It can even be just a public record for yourself. People have been writing diaries for hundreds of years, as I've said, not necessarily for publication. So have a go, think about it, do something like this, write some scribbled notes down, because you'll look back on them at the time, and as I mentioned the other day, and think, was it really as bad as what it was? We thought it was. Sometimes it will be. You think, bloody hell, I didn't realise we had to do that, or we couldn't do this, or whatever. And others, we look back through rose-coloured spectacles sometimes. So give it a go, even if you just give it a try. You never know. You might look back, hand it on to your children, to your grandchildren, or even to some social science project or a museum or something like that, a library. Who knows? We're all as equal as everybody else. Our thoughts are just as valuable and valid as anybody else's. Politician, kings, queens, whatever it might be. So anyway, I'll leave it there. I've spoken for far too long. Hopefully I shall speak to you tomorrow. The Daily Diary. See ya. Bye.